Today, I have with me my good friend Mark Shabai. Mark is an NLP mindset coach based in South Africa, and today we're going to have a discussion about presuppositions in the context of the NLP Meta Model and coaching clients. As you may know, our senses are bombarded with millions of bits of information every moment, and through the universal modeling processes of generalization, distortion, deletion, we chunk that information down to 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information to form a mental map with which we can navigate the world. And as Alfred Korzybski stated, the map is not the territory. The word is not the thing. It is just a map, which we reference to move through the world. But in terms of mental maps, they are always impoverished. And as such, it could be a good idea to keep that in mind, such that we become a bit slower to form a judgment and instead focus on gathering information to update our understanding of the world. For those of you who are not familiar with the original version of the NLP Meta Model, there are 3 categories: distortions, generalizations, and deletions. And within those categories, there are a number of subcategories: MLCCP, NUS. That's mind, reads, loss, performative, cause and effect, complex equivalents, presuppositions, universal quantifiers, modal operators, normalizations, unspecified verbs, and simple deletions. Today, we're going to focus in on presuppositions in the context of coaching clients. So, what are presuppositions? A presupposition is a condition or element in a statement which has to be true in order for the sentence to make sense. But in doing so, we may accept something that is either true or false. For example, the cat sat on the mat presupposes that there is a cat and a mat. But was there really a cat or a mat? Only further investigation will prove this to be true or not. So, Mark, why would you like to have a conversation about presuppositions?
Well, firstly, Abby, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited to discuss this topic with you. It's very important for me to understand exactly what presuppositions are and, of course, how to use them to help people. So basically, I would like to know how presuppositions can help people who feel that they are stuck in life. I, for one, have been stuck many times in life and have used presupposition to help myself get out of a stuck position. So I was just wondering, if we feel stuck, I know that it's an idea that we have narrowed our focus down and in a bad situation, we don't really see any choices and so forth. And I know that one of the presuppositions in NLP is choice is better than no choice. So, yeah.
Well, in terms of stuckness and presuppositions, one would assume that the person is actually assuming. The person's assuming they have presuppositions in mind, which they have yet to challenge. So I'm just wondering if you could give me some content about stuckness.
Right. So, for example, I would be in a position where I would have to do a particular task. And that task, I'm well qualified to complete the task, but for some reason, I'm not really getting around to doing it because I have this feeling that if I do it, it's not going to turn out the way people expect it to turn out. So I have expectations that it's going to fail, and it's going to fail because my thinking is always gravitating towards the fact that although I'm skilled in maybe doing it, it's not going to be what people are really looking for. And then I just end up not doing it. And it can really affect me in a deep way because I'm not getting the job done. And I finally get to a point where I say, well, damn it, I've just got to do this job. And I actually put everything that I've got into doing the job. I do the job. And the people around me seem to have accepted that the job was well done, which totally wasn't what I expected. So I have these expectations that people want to see something different. Let me give you another example, maybe a better example.
Slow down.
Sorry, yes.
Because it was something that you like, so there's the process. There's the strategy. So you have an expectation that in your mind, you think it's going to fail. It won't meet the expectations of other people. So then you call that being stuck, or you put it off, or you procrastinate. But then when you actually get around to doing it, and you discover that people are really quite happy with the result, my question is, well, why don't you just update your map? What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Abby. And that's a very good question, because every time I have to do something for others, I default back to that fact that what I'm going to do is not going to be as good as
other
people.
Excuse me for interrupting.
I'm comparing myself with other people a lot, and with what they do.
Okay, I have to interrupt in cases like this.
Yes.
So you recognize a pattern.
Yes.
Right. So you recognize the pattern. Yes. So then you recognize the pattern. So then if you look back on the strategy that you use, where there's a project or a task, an activity, something, and then what you do is you have thoughts arise in the mind, and I don't know what those thoughts are. That's going to be internal dialogue and pictures, and then feelings, and that slows you down. But then at some point you break free from that, so there has to be like another step in the strategy where you break free, and something will trigger that. So there's going to be a picture in mind, something you say to yourself, feeling, then you actually move through, you take action, and then at some point you complete the strategy, and so you exit, because the day you go, I've completed it, then you show it to whoever it is, and they go, that's great, that's wonderful, that's fantastic. And then you move further on, and then you reflect upon that, and you go, well, I just keep repeating the process. So then looking at this in terms of strategies, where do you need to actually to intervene in your strategy to make the change?
It's the internal dialogue. I think what would happen in the beginning is I have an image of the task or the project failing. So it begins with that image, and then I give focus to that image. It could be an image of people making comments about the fact that I could have done better, or why didn't I do it this way? Why did I do it that way? And so forth. So I have these images. Those images then translate back into an internal dialogue. I have a dialogue with myself. Yes, you see, Mark, you've done that before. It just doesn't work out, or, this is what people are going to say. So I believe that maybe I would have to interrupt that image. The moment I get that image of that failure, or of people saying something like, I didn't do a very good job, and that's where the interruption should take place.
Yeah.
I mustn't give focus to that image.
Yes, so you're running a movie in your mind. You like it. We're all movie directors. We all run the movies in the cinema of our mind, and then there's an auditory component, and there's a kinesthetic, and then if you don't like the movie you're running in your mind, well, why don't you just change the movie? And so then it's like, how do you do the process? So first off, you have to have awareness that you're running a movie in your mind, and that you've got this internal dialogue, which is going, nah, it's not going to work, blah, they'll say this, I'll say that. And so then you have to move yourself to a meta level where you're actually aware of that. And then now we're using question statements, commands, and it's going to be a question. It's going to be like, well, Mark, does that thought serve me? Is that really what I want to be conceptualizing? And everything has an upside and a downside, and it could be, yeah, it's probably just not going to work, and so why not do it? But then on the other hand, you might go, and you may have done it a dozen times before, and it's failed, or a dozen times before, and you've succeeded. So either way, you don't discount, but you've got to be able to look at both sides of the argument or the venture or whatever it actually is. Look at both sides, and then you're having a look at what your desired outcome actually is, running through the well-formed outcome questions, like is it reasonable and attainable, and do you know what to do, etc., etc. And then you steer it slightly down a different path.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So again, we have a situation, I suppose one of the presuppositions in NLP is that there's no failure, only feedback. And one of the main components to me continually doing that over and over again is I have not solidified that within my awareness that I am going to learn from this situation. The other thing I would like to say is that I have succeeded in many projects and tasks that have been given to me, and they've been very successful. However, I default back to the negative. So I will always go back to, I did that last time and it didn't work out the way it was supposed to work out or the way people expected it to work out. And that's what I focus on. So it's at that point that I really have to interrupt that type of thinking, as you say, change that movie, change that scene, and go back to the more successful one and use that to drive me into getting the project or the task done.
Yeah. So it's like you are the one who's the key element in all of this.
Right.
And this is about, NLP is about running your own brain. And then, running your own brain. And then we bring it back to some basic presuppositions in NLP, all right? And so you got to understand your personality type, because that's your genius. You got to understand your personality type, those 8 cognitive functions. You've got to know what your subtype is and the meta programs. Got to know what your value system actually is, and what your passions and your interests are. You got to know, and then you got to get yourself into the environment in which you flourish. And part of the environment could be that maybe the environment is actually where you are, like your office or wherever it actually is, and it's the people that you're actually talking with, or the people you're actually what you're looking at online on Facebook or whatever, and that's like the environment. And so if you're actually if the information that's coming in is from the wrong type of people, for example, or it's from the wrong website, you're actually on the wrong group on Facebook. It's the environment. And so that may just reinforce the negative aspects of Mark, the old Mark. And what you really need to do is to actually so rather than actually phoning that person or going onto that web page, you actually phone somebody else or you email somebody else. You've got all those little elements in the system need to be evaluated.
Right. That's very, very interesting in changing the environment. There are times that obviously, I can't change the environment. I will find myself in a situation that is where I have to be, and I can't change that environment. And the thing is, what I find so interesting, Abby, is the fact that, although I am aware of these thoughts that I have and these images in my mind, you allow them to run. You allow them to create these emotions. And once those emotions start, coming into play, then it affects your behavior. And of course, as you know, in the long run, it's going to have a negative effect on the outcome of the situation. And that's what's, I suppose, happening. So, yeah, it is feedback. I have to learn from that. I have in many ways learned from that. And that's one of the reasons I want to understand presuppositions on a more deeper level, so that I can apply them in my life and help myself communicate better. If that makes any sense, because I don't believe that I communicate the way. Again, here we have this belief. I have this belief that I'm not communicating as well as I should. I will watch speakers, for example. I will listen to you speak, and I will listen to Tony Robbins and, all these great speakers out there. And I would think, wow, there's no way that I'll be able to speak like that. So I just freeze up, for example. So I'm comparing myself to other people. Maybe I'm not comparing apples with apples. I'm not sure, So it's that comparison.
Okay, so I'm not really quite clear on how you're using the term presuppositions, all right? But if we just use maybe the term assumptions, for example, and then...
Yeah, it's an assumption that I have, yes.
Assumptions makes it a bit broader, all right? And then...
Right.
And then it's just like... But if you want to... if you want to talk about presuppositions, then the first thing that you have to do is to recognize presuppositions. So you have to be able to recognize presuppositions when other people use them. So, okay. So, for example, let's say you're watching something. Do you watch TV or I don't?
Really?
Yeah, I haven't watched
really.
TV in decades. But, okay, so you say you're watching something on YouTube. So you're seeing a program on YouTube, and whether it's the news or whoever, but you will hear presuppositions in their statements all the time. All right. So we have to be careful what presuppositions we refer to, but there's presuppositions there about climate and presuppositions there about, bugs.
Gender.
Yes. And
race.
There's all
education, yeah.
There's all sorts of presuppositions where the conversation starts, say about climate or global warming or something or other, and the presupposition is, bang, science is settled, and then the politicians get into their story. When what people, regardless of the science or the evidence or the facts, the listener, you or me, people watching, what we all need to do is always question the presupposition, to realize that the presupposition the speaker sets. So we make it really simple. The cat sat on the mat. That's really safe, right? The cat sat on the mat. So if you're watching Fox News or CNN and they come out and they say, oh yes, the cat sat on the mat, and then the cat played with the dog, and then they had a fight, and then they made up, and then they cuddled. All right? But it presupposes that there is actually something in existence called a cat and a dog and a mat and all that sort of stuff, and then they can do that processes, whatever. So if you just accept the story, you just blindly accepted the story. And even you might go, oh, well, that's just a story about a cat sitting on a mat. Yeah, but that's everything we get through the news, or everything so much we get in conversations with we are accepting a presupposition. There are assumptions. So you pick up your car key, you pick up and you assume that it will actually work when you go to open your car. So most car keys now have a little battery in there, but there's an assumption that we have that it will work. You pick up your air conditioner thing and assuming that it will work. So we go, okay, well, look, there's a battery obviously in it because it's got the screen on it. But yeah, it was just like before. It's just like, yeah, the only way you can really know is just to press to see if it does turn on. Because so often our assumptions are wrong. And that's where I came up with the idea for the Matchbox game. So you get a Matchbox. Remember the Matchbox game? You get a Matchbox. So what I do, I show you this, and what do you see? So
a matchbox.
A matchbox. Yeah. And some people say it's a box of matches. Well, that's an assumption. You're assuming there's something in it. And you might shake it, go, oh, that's matches. Yeah, let's open it. And we find there's not matches, there's toothpicks, for example.
Right.
And so, okay, we open it and there are matches. And we go, look, there's matches. Okay, so we're going hiking. We're going to go hiking and we're going to need to light a fire. So let's take the matches with us. Put them in your backpack. Yeah. How do you know the matches will light when you get there? You go, oh, look, they're red, they're light. Well, you don't really know. You have to pull one out and test to see that it actually works. And then you go, yeah, cool, pop in the backpack, get to your destination, and then it starts to snow and whatever. It's cold, let's make a fire. Pull out the matches, and they're wet. You just assume that when you threw them in the backpack, they would stay dry and they would light the other end. It's like, All the way along, you have to challenge your assumptions. So if you're just assuming or presupposing that it will work, it's not the case. So then you take that and then you bring it back to the information that we get through the media. It doesn't matter whether it's mainstream or alternative or social media. And you see something. So I'll see something, or like I'm watching a video on YouTube, and they're actually showing a clip, or a clip of a web page. I pause the video. I then go to Google to search, and I actually search for the web page, and I'll do my own search because I want to get a bit more information on it. I don't just assume that what they presented to me is actually correct, and that commentary is correct. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
And so,
it makes a lot of sense.
So you have to get that sort of. A lot of people don't have the attitude, but you've got to get that attitude where you're always challenging everything that you see and hear, and then to understand that half the time, maybe at least half the time, you're wrong. So the light goes out, flickers back on. All right. It's just like, for me, it's just, I know I just can't assume. I'll assume something. So, okay. So I always understood that malaria was a tropical disease. So you go to these websites or we have to try and avoid global warming, but with global warming, what we're going to get, the world's going to heat up. And just a couple of degrees, it means that we're going to get more mosquitoes are going to be breeding in those hot swamps. And then the mosquitoes are going to spread the disease of malaria, for example, all right? So most people, when they actually see that in writing or they hear it on the news, they will accept. What are the presuppositions in what I just said?
You're asking me?
Yeah. And anybody who's watching, if you could type below, what are the presuppositions in what I just said?
Well, we're presupposing that the world's going to heat up.
Okay. Yes. And then the next bit?
Okay.
About the mosquitoes and the malaria.
Yeah, well, there's going to be more of them.
All right. So there's a presupposition that actually warmer temperatures means that mosquitoes breed faster.
Right. Okay. So, right. So warmer temperatures, warms up the water, more mosquitoes, and we're going to have, right.
So, keep going with the presuppositions.
No, stuck.
See how challenging it actually is?
I think it's challenging because you have to be so aware of the language that is being used by the speaker. You have to be very, very aware of what's being said.
Yes, you have to listen.
You have to listen.
You have to listen.
All right.
And so few people listen. So you have to listen. And so what I said, that as the world warms up, the swamps will get, as the world warms up, swamps get warmer, mosquitoes will breed faster, which means we're going to get more malaria from the mosquitoes, and that's going to be a problem. So
right. So we could also, sorry, I'm interrupting. Sorry. Yes.
Please interrupt.
All right. So we could also say that warmer temperatures are not going to warm up the marshes. They're going to dehydrate the marshes and probably dehydrate many of the lakes and the rivers. And therefore, there won't be that many mosquitoes.
Okay. All right. So you go that. Okay. And then.
Yeah, and therefore there won't be, more malaria.
Okay.
There'll actually be less malaria.
Okay.
Just going another way now.
That's fair enough. It's really good. And so there's another presupposition there about malaria being a tropical disease.
Oh, a tropical disease. Right. Well, we're presupposing that that malaria only comes from the tropics. And I suppose what we're saying is that warmer weather is going to create more tropical areas around the globe. And because mosquitoes are born and bred or breed in tropical areas, because of that global warming, more tropical areas are going to be formed, and therefore more mosquitoes are going to breed in those areas, and therefore more malaria.
So I always assumed that malaria was a tropical disease. But do a check. You have to do a check. Go on Google and do a check. And people are watching, do a check and just comment below. And what you will find is really interesting. And what you will find is that mosquitoes flourish in the Arctic. I find it hard to believe, but all the ice on their little wings, but mosquitoes flourish in the Arctic, and malaria actually is a problem in the Arctic area.
Wow.
And you might go, Abby, you're talking rubbish, you're talking rubbish. Well, but anyway, so I was watching a video and I saw someone mention that. And so I did my search. I go, I want to get this I don't just click out. I go, I'm going to check this. So I went online and I checked, and in 1920s in Russia, there was a malaria plague. They call it a plague. It was a malaria plague. I think about 80,000 people died in Russia from malaria. And then I only had a quick look at the map, and it was across Europe, and even in England, people died from malaria in the 1920s.
That is amazing.
Isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, it is amazing. So we just accept these things as being true without challenging or looking at them deeper.
Yeah.
That brings me to another point. So the meta model is very important in a situation like this, isn't it? Because my beliefs, for example, about people, that people are better than me, for example. People can do a better job than me. People are able to speak better than me. So I am assuming this.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming it based upon what I've seen and what I've experienced.
And when you say
you understand?
People, we have to specify which people specifically are better than you.
Very good.
And then these people are better than you according to whom?
Right. Okay, I like that.
All right.
Yes.
And
right. So it's
and then
okay.
And then you got the comparator there. Some people are better than you. There's a comparator there. There's a deletion, which is like, well, how specifically are they better? Are there people who are worse than you? So you can look at both sides of it. Yeah.
And we do that. We adopt these filters into our lives, and it's interesting how we gravitate towards the negative. And if I can just share this with you, I had a client a while ago, and there was an exercise that I asked him to do, and that was to think of a time in his life when he was really, excited, at the top of his game. He was confident, he was strong, and he felt that everything was going well in his life and so forth. And, he sat there and it was a blank stare. He really struggled thinking about a positive time in his life. And I find this so interesting. This is not the first time this has happened. And you'll find that people will gravitate towards the negative easier, or more than the positive. And I said, okay, don't worry about that right now. What I would like you to think of is I would like you to think of something negative in your life. And he went, oh, wow, sure. Today, last week, last month, when I was young, there was no problem in him being able to think about these negative situations in his life. So where I'm going with this is I believe, in my experience, that we base many of our assumptions on those experiences, on those negative experiences. So coming back to what you were saying about challenging these assumptions, this is why presuppositions in NLP and in the coaching model are so important, because we are challenging an assumption that is keeping me stuck. You mentioned the word stuckness earlier, and that's what keeps me stuck. I continually focus, I continually run that movie in my mind, and that's all I can think of.
Yeah.
So my question would be then, if that's the case, well, you did mention earlier that we must change that movie because I'm the one who's running the movie. I'm the director, so I can change that movie. But my question is, how do you find the correct sources of information? How do you know what is true and what isn't true today? Do you, because you can even question, I suppose you question the truth as well, But where do you go for all of these things? We have the internet, and we know that the internet is actually not all truth.
Okay, so before we get to that, if you just go back to the focus can be on the negative or the positive. So
yes.
So that's something that you are doing. It's like, where's your attention? Is it on the negative, on the positive? Is your attention on the inner world or the outer world? Is your attention on self or is your attention on others? Are you looking at the content? Are you looking at the content or the content or the process?
The context.
Content or the process. I posted something a couple of days ago on Facebook about climate, and it was just a video I came across. It was a video, and it was a really, really interesting video, and it was an hour-long video. It took me a few days to watch it, and I watched it, and so I saw something on Facebook, and okay, this will fit, and I just shared it there. And then what happens? Somebody comes in, attacks me. So there's an ad hominem attack. It's like, who is Abby Eagle, this expert on science, thinks he knows everything. And it's just like, Jesus. So I crafted a really polite response because the person made an ad hominem attack. All I did was present a link to a video, and it showed the little thumbnail and the title, and I'm pretty sure the person never even bothered to watch the video because because they responded so quickly. And all they did, it's happened so many times, the person attacked me. They didn't actually attack the statement, they attacked me. And so I made a polite response to that, which stated that, and just sort of telling this woman what she really needed to do, not to judge me. I explained what the judgment was a prejudgment based upon insufficient information, and that what I was doing, I actually shared a video and there was content in there, and that was all I was doing. It was like, there you are, if you're interested, you can look at this content. But this is what people do so often. They actually will attack the person rather than actually question the information. And so then it comes, and then the thing about the focus is on the negative rather than the positive, and you had that client and you asked him to think about some positive things that happened and he couldn't think of anything. And so it's like, yeah, it's hard work. It was just like 10 minutes ago when I was getting you to to think about the presuppositions regarding malaria and mosquitoes. It's like you have to really think really hard. And that's what so many people, and you can please challenge that assumption that I have, so many people don't do that. And I know that many people don't do that because I see it so often on YouTube videos and mainstream news where they make these assumptions about events in the past that are total bullshit. And if they would just do a little bit of research, but then it comes down to using your brain. So it's teaching people to use the brain to actually to check, to listen to what the words people use, and actually using the meta model to challenge it for every category. All right. And so then when it comes down to finding the facts on anything, first off, you have to be sort of like disagreeable to a certain extent. Now, I'm not a disagreeable person. So on the Big 5 personality test, I come out as highly agreeable. And yet in terms of and I very much sought the sameness with people, but I don't defer to an external authority. And what I do, I want to do a check just to make sure. So I do my own research and I want to check. So I'm actually sorting for difference. So I'm not looking to see if what the person said was true. I want to find out if there's any exceptions to it. And that's actually a trait of creativity. So people who are highly creative have that this difference meta program. So when I'm actually drawing, like I spend 45 minutes drawing every night, and once I've drawn a mushroom 3 or 4 times, I don't want to draw another mushroom. I want to draw something different. So then I'll draw a picket fence. And I've done that a few times. And I go, what am I going to draw now? Well, I could improve my mushrooms and picket fences, but I want to do something different. And that's, I think, is a trait of, but it is actually a trait of creativity. So we're looking for what could be different. And so then, you want to find the correct facts. And first off, you have to question. So example with the malaria, I never ever had questioned it, but because I watch a wide range of videos, I'm open to new sources of information, and I'll watch videos which are uncomfortable, and they may not be nice people. You know, they could be like, I was going to joke there about CNN or Fox News presenters, but anyway, they may not be nice people that you're watching. You may not like the person, but they are saying something. And so if it was written down, would you treat it differently? And so the person says something and you have to go, that's interesting. This person seems to believe it. Well, they could just be deluded, or maybe they are telling the truth. So there has to be like an openness. There's an openness. So you have to do that, have that openness. And then there's something like, for example, the malaria and the mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I never ever would have thought to challenge the presupposition that it was a tropical disease. So it does take a bit of work, but then there are these things, but then you've got to learn to challenge your presuppositions. So when there's something in the news about some war or this, that, or the other, and you have to go, and do a check.
Oh, okay. I'd like to, and for the sake of those viewing the video, I'd like to ask you your opinion on a particular experience that I had a while ago with a young lady where she was going through a very difficult time. I can't remember exactly what she was going through, but I did ask her if she had tried hypnotherapy, because according to her, she had tried this and she had tried that and nothing was really working. So I said, just, explore that for a moment, and that is hypnotherapy. And she immediately sort of reared back and said, I would never go for hypnosis. It's not godly, it's demonic, and I just would never go for hypnotherapy. And I sat there and I was quite taken aback with her response, because she was very, very against this. So here we have a typical situation of a woman who was against something that she didn't know much about, because I then went on to ask her how she knew that hypnotherapy was demonic or ungodly. And this was her response. She said to me, I read it somewhere, and my pastor told me that hypnosis is of the devil.
So,
okay. And this is a true story.
Yeah. So what you're doing there is you're saying to her, how do you know that to be true? And that's what we need to get people to do. When people say something, malaria, it's a tropical disease, we say, well, how do you know that to be true? And when your client or this woman says hypnosis is demonic, and it's just like, how do you know that to be true? And she says, well, I read it somewhere. And then it's like, well, how much? So she read it. What did she read? What did she read specifically?
Specifically.
Was it? And then who was the author who wrote that? How much information does she have on hypnosis? And you'll probably find it's quite small. And then she has an external authority. So her pastor says it's bad or something, right? But she hasn't actually bothered to, or she really maybe she hasn't had the motivation or the interest to actually to follow through and to question the pastor and say, well, how do you know that to be true? Where's your evidence?
Right. Okay. So it's going on and on and on and on now with those questioning. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just like, and then if you was to ask more questions, or if you would ask her and say, well, where is hypnosis? And what types of hypnosis are there? Can you do hypnosis on yourself? What is hypnosis specifically? What's the process? Has hypnosis ever been used with evil intent? And examples, you go, yeah, there's been lots of examples, all right? Has hypnosis ever been used with positive intent? And yes, and there's lots of examples. And she might go, oh, really? And so then you're gathering information from a lot of different places about hypnosis, and then when she does that, like who uses hypnosis, if she does her research and she asks the pastor, like who uses hypnosis? Who uses hypnosis for evil purposes or to manipulate people?
Right.
And heaven forbid, one will actually find that within that religion called Christianity, there are too many examples. So there's Benny Hinn, there's a guy in Africa, I think he's a German guy in Africa or whatever, and they do the whole thing with slamming the person on the head, and Benny Hinn had a whole pile of bodies, people just falling off the stage on top of each other. It's absolutely disgusting. The guy's a Christian.
Right.
He's a Christian evangelical pastor, or what he calls himself.
Right.
And so there we're gathering information from every aspect. And then this is what she has to do. See, and so if you can't get her to do it, well, you could just say, hey, have a watch of Benny Hinn.
Preaching.
Have you seen Benny Hinn's videos?
Yes, I have seen them. They are, I don't really want to comment on them, but they can be they're quite hair raising.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's that, see? So it's like one has to gather information. And that goes back to the meta model where we have information, billions of bits of information are available to us through our senses, but we distort, delete, and generalize that down to 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. So it means, then we build a mental map of the world, but the maps are always impoverished. They're always impoverished. Right. And so then it's up to us, depending upon our motivations, to gather more information. So if someone has a health issue, then it's up to them to gather information. And if you're working with this group of medical healers, or whatever they want to call themselves, and you're not getting the results, maybe try some other types of healers and see what results they get. If that doesn't work, try another type. Realize there are many, many categories of healers and health professionals. And to take that attitude with everything that you actually do. So when you buy some food, you buy a burger or something, and it's a steak burger, don't assume that it contains, if it's a beef burger, don't assume it contains beef.
Beef.
You know? Because if it's actually one of these processed things, it can be full of a whole lot of additives, heaps of additives. Right. And then, of course, burgers now, so many of them aren't even meat. The ones, they're plant-based meat.
Soya, yeah.
And they disguise it to look like the real thing. And so people might assume that they're eating this, assume that it's healthy
beef burger.
But in actual fact, it's actually toxic soy. So,
okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, go on.
So, presuppositions, NLP presuppositions, from what I'm gathering in our conversation now, are very, very important in adjusting our perceptual filters of the world around us. Am I right in my belief there, in my statement? Mm-hmm. And these presuppositions help us, I suppose, become, or I suppose curiosity would come before the presupposition. You know? I would be curious about something. Mm-hmm. I would then ask questions about that particular subject or topic, and then challenge my own beliefs or assumptions. I suppose we all have certain beliefs and assumptions that are erroneous. Yeah, I know I have. Okay, so my next question for you is to help me understand, and maybe our viewers understand a little bit more about this questioning, this curiosity, and looking for the truth and interrogating what we believe. Let's speak quickly about money. Here I have a goal set up that I'm going to make $1 million, for example, at the end of the year. And I work very hard, and I have my vision board up, and I write my goals down, and I've put it up around me, and I look at my goals every day, and I use affirmations, but I just don't seem to be making any headway whatsoever in the form of financial growth. Okay, I then sit down with Abby, and in talking with Abby, he asks me a question about my beliefs concerning money. And I have this belief that money or wealth, let's say wealth, is only for the select few. So, for example, it could be for the actors and actresses in Hollywood, but it's only for a specific few people. So this belief that I have now, would you say that that belief is what is preventing me from going forward in making my $1 million?
No.
No. Really?
Yeah.
Remember now, this is a belief that I have. It's a deep-seated belief that I have that wealth is only for. So that's not affecting my achievement?
No, well, because you set a goal to make $1 million by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So you run through the well-formed outcome questions.
Right.
You run through the well-formed outcome questions, and you're saying, well, what do you want? What will it look like, sound like, feel like? When do you want it? Where do you want it? With whom do you want it? And then you go, why do you want it? So then you get your values, right? So you get your motivation for why you want this outcome. So you have an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcome, obviously, it can't be $1 million. It has to be you've achieved something which brought in $1 million. So you brought in, say, $10 million in sales, and you get 10% profits. You've got $1 million. So you're not focused. So you have to focus. So we're coming back to the actual project itself and the activities.
The process.
Yeah, and then you come down to, okay, so then you come back to now, and it's like, what are the steps and stages? So you've got the steps and stages running all the way through. And so, do you know what to do? Is it self-initiated? If you don't know what to do, if you don't know what the steps and stages are, you can sit in your office and affirm to yourself, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to make $1 million. You can do this vision board, put these pictures on it. Nothing's going to happen. Guaranteed. It's because you're not doing it. Not doing anything. You have to take action steps.
Sure.
And then it's just like, so if you don't know what to do you know somebody else who knows what to do? So they can actually help you discover what you really need to do, what the steps are. And then it has to be self-initiated and maintained. So you can't rely upon external luck or something, variables like that. It has to be you who is the one. And the only affirmations which are really useful is affirmations. You got to write your to-do list. You got to get out of bed in the morning, and you got to focus in. You use question statements, commands, and you just tell yourself, get down, do it, take action, make the phone call. That's what it comes down to. You don't just affirm to yourself and go, oh, I'm wonderful. I can make phone calls. I can make phone calls.
Sure.
Because it's not going anywhere. You have to say, get on the phone and make the call. All right, it's a command to yourself. And then you have, can you do what you need to do? So if you can't make the phone calls because you're just too much of an introvert and you hate making phone calls, well, then do you know somebody else who can? Can you outsource? Can you afford to outsource it? Or maybe if you go back to the actual project itself, is it compelling? Right. Is that really what you want to be doing? Because if you've got to be on the phone making all these phone calls, maybe it doesn't suit your personality type. All right.
Okay.
And then have you done it before? Steps and stages, you've got an action plan, have a way to monitor your process, and the interferences, all right? So the interferences could be, like you say, you just have this belief, that, it's just like you're working class or something, and it's only because your parents told you and your kid, only rich people can buy this or that, it's not for us. We just need to be satisfied with what we have, and the intent could have been quite positive, just like accept what you actually have, but then you learn from that to stop striving, or you formed a belief. But you then actually create your well-formed outcome, something which is really important to you. Is it reasonable? Is it attainable? And then you come all the way back to now, and what's the first step that you can actually take? And often the steps that you take are tedious and boring.
Sure.
And the person has them, but people have told me if I just put these pictures on the wall of a swimming pool and a BMW and this, that, and the other, and then I just actually lie on the bed and just say to myself, oh, money flows to me, money flows to me. It's like, yeah, but you're laying on your bed.
Yeah, sure. I think that most teachers actually teach action as well. There has to be action taken as well. And I think that's just to keep your unconscious mind focused as well, on the fact that this is what you want to achieve. Because we know that 90% of our life is governed by autopilot. We just do things automatically. And the reason I mentioned that about my belief not mine per se, but someone that would have a belief that, you know, wealth and success or money is only for a select few, that they would be not self-sabotaging themselves, but they would have a block. You know, it didn't matter what they did. It didn't matter how many times they affirmed the fact that they're going to achieve this goal, and they get out there and they make the calls and they do everything. They just don't seem to make any headway. And that's because their unconscious is working against them, because we know that the unconscious or the mind is used to protect, you know, one from danger. And in this case, the danger is that you are going to, you know, have to knock on doors, or you're going to have to make, you know, telephone calls, and you're going to have to be, you know, in a person's face or whatever it is, you know. So that's why I asked that question.
Well, so if the person has these beliefs or these frames of mind that no one is going to buy anything, then and they still make the call, they walk into the shop. Well, see, it's like this because you can change the belief, right? You can change the belief.
You must challenge that belief, isn't it? You've got to challenge it.
Yeah. Well, you can actually change the belief. So then they have a belief that they can be all powerful and this, that, and the other. But when it comes down to it, it's just like, in terms of assumptions and presuppositions, you challenge your assumptions. So if you have the belief that, and it's okay to have the belief, look, no one's going to buy this. No one's going to buy this. Not a problem. As long as you actually go and knock on the door or make the phone call. So you make the phone call and you think, well, yeah, no one's going to buy this. But that doesn't matter as long as you make the phone call.
Okay.
So you make the phone call and then they buy it. And you go, geez, I never believed that. And so it's absolutely okay. So for myself, when I've been painting like acrylics or over landscapes, and I think to myself, this isn't going to work, or this is shit, but I'm still painting. And then I look at it a week later, I go, that's pretty good. You know? But so it doesn't matter if you have like a so-called limiting belief, because it could just be the adversary where you can have a supporter where you go, yeah, you can have it, you can do it, it's easy. But then on the other side, no, it's not. It's too damn hard. It's difficult. It's a challenge. You're probably going to fail. All right. So you're just not taking sides. You go with both sides and you go, okay, so now I'm actually feel much more balanced, but I'm going to take action and see what results I get.
Excellent. So you're challenging that belief anyway, simply by taking action. And by taking action, you're going to get the sales. And then you're going to look at it and say, I can't believe this. I've got a sale. This is amazing. And now it's challenging a belief that I had that it's only for, you know, a select few. So I do understand that. Excellent. Thank you.
And in that, what you said there, and like you get the sale and you say, I can't believe it. And so you look at that and you go, the person's saying, I can't believe it. But they've got the result and they say, I can't believe it. But then it's like, at what level is the disbelief? It's like, because, well, obviously they've got the money in their hand and it's like, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe I did it. It's like, you have to look at the actual words the person's using. And it's not that they would say, no, you've got it. Say that you believe it. It's like, no, there's something there I can't really believe that I did it. This is amazing. And so then it's, yeah, let's give it another go. Oh, I'll probably fail. No, let's give it a go anyway. And you give it a go.
Well, this comes back again to the fact that we gravitate towards the negative. So using the word can't is something that I think the majority of people would do. I can't believe it. I can't believe that I made this money. I can't believe that this person bought from me. See how we gravitate towards that? Automatically we gravitate towards the negative.
And then I have to challenge you on the pronoun we. It's like...
All right, okay.
So...
all right. Very...
So the we, like, who is the we, you know? It's like, are you talking about yourself or are you talking about other people?
Salespeople.
See? And so you really can't assume that it's about everyone. It's just like, just yourself, see? And that's where people make mistakes all the time.
This is so true. So true. All right.
So
I see here. Yeah, sorry.
in terms of creating the next best version of yourself, what assumptions would be useful?
Right. Firstly, in my life, I, Mark, must stop assuming that everybody is perfect and do things perfectly all the time. Number one. Number two, my behavior doesn't determine who I am. Many times I've been in a situation where I think that my behavior determines who I am. Number three, my perceptions of a situation may be flawed.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a big one for me. As I said before, I've been in situations where someone has turned around to me and said, "Oh, Mark, you seem to be a type A personality. You get very defensive, or you become very defensive, rather, in a situation." And that's because, once again, something that I believe or that I hold to be true is now being challenged, and I feel that I'm being threatened, and therefore I go on the defensive. So, yes, that's my third one. My perceptions of a situation not may be flawed, is possibly flawed. Okay, so those are my three.
Okay, and then the final question. So how do you do the process of being in sensory awareness, questioning what you see and hear, and constantly gathering more information?
Oh, okay. I process perceptual positioning. I have to see things from other perspectives, from other people's point of view. I have to respect that person's belief or perception or whatever it is. So see things from a different perspective.
So you got your perceptual positions.
Yeah. In my case, this is something that I would really have to do to gather more information. If I need information about a specific situation from a person, maybe they're telling me one thing and I need to put myself in their shoes to maybe experience what they're experiencing or believe what they're believing. I have to be mindful of the speaker, and this is something that I really need to practice, and that is, I might be listening, but I'm not necessarily hearing. So I really have to become a better listener. Be mindful of the speaker. And lastly, I think in my life, speaking from Mark's point of view, I must be aware of my feelings and my emotions. And rather than take things personally, understand that this is feedback. It's feedback. Okay, take it as feedback.
Yes, it's feedback. It's just information.
Yes, that's all I can think of now at the moment on that.
And my last point is about the perceptual positions, where it's like,
yes,
because people too often get sort of like, they get boxed. They're like on the left or the right, they're this religion, that religion. They get boxed, and then they're sort of like, and that's the problem with political parties, because the political parties get their platforms, which sort of force people into those frames of mind, which is not really useful. And so with perceptual positions, it's like, well, you're learning to look at an event through the eyes of another person. But you don't have to do it like with empathy, where you're standing in the shoes and what it would feel like to be the other person. It's just a perceptual thing where you learn to look at an event in history from a different perspective. So if you're looking at, so you're looking at, say, you're looking at the Second World War, for example, and so I'm Australian, born in England, and so, I could look at the war from that perspective, and then with that there comes a bias and a judgment. But then there were other nations involved, and you can look at it from the perspective of a different nation, of a different group of people. And that is what it takes a lot of courage. And then, so then it doesn't really, you're still who you are. You're still who you are. You still have your identity and your affiliations. But now what you're doing is you're stepping back and you're learning to look at historical events and things which are happening right now in the world. And rather than actually taking sides on that country in Europe and that country in Europe,
be a dispassionate observer.
You just be a dispassionate observer, and you're withholding judgment because there's just too much information to gather. And so we really can't form an opinion. You go, I support this side because, well, you show me the data and we'll find there's some information missing. Well, I support this side. Then once again, you'll find some information missing. It's just like being open and just gathering information and just noticing. And then from that, and then looking at the patterns that you recognize and how different people get hooked up into it. And then they have their agendas for one reason or another, and just staying fascinated.
Fantastic.
So on that point, just like to say thank you. And for anybody who's still actually watching at this point, I'd just like to say thank you very much, as I just broke my headphones.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again.